My name is Eric Naguski. Thank you so much for tuning in, I guess you'd say. I am a guide here in Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania. I think this is my 22nd season guiding around here, and been plying the waters of Pennsylvania with a fly rod for a couple of years now. I had a book come out in the springtime, favorite flies for Pennsylvania. It's sort of a primer for a Pennsylvania fly box, if you will. There's a good mix of nymphs, dry flies, streamers, emerger patterns. In the book, Stackpole is the publisher. So be great if you went and checked it out. Shameless promotion, I guess. The other thing, what we're talking about tonight, basically, is here in the Cumberland Valley, we call them Cressbugs. Back in 1972, in Fly Fisherman magazine, Ed Shank, Cumberland Valley legend, introduced the fly fishing world to the sow bug, to the cressbug, as we call him here. This is his pattern here. As you can see, it's a pretty simple shape, almost football shaped. Cressbugs are the aquatic version of the roly-poly or the pill bugs that some of you might know that you find under logs, and they basically function the same way that or occupy the same space that the terrestrial equivalent occupies. The sow bugs or cressbugs, they feed on decaying plant matter, organic matter, and typically they're found in a lot of spring creeks, and a lot of tailwaters around the country, around the U.S. And they're available to the fish 365 days a year, and that's why they're important. To consider having a couple good sow bug or cressbug imitations in your fly box. I also have a article on the cressbug, or you're going to have to forgive me because I'm going to call them cressbugs because I'm from here in the Cumberland Valley. In the August September issue of Fly Fisherman magazine, talking about this arthropod crustacean, and I offer up a couple good patterns in the article. One of those being my own, which they'll call the HG Cressbug, and simply the HG just stands for hot glue. A little bit of background on this pattern. A couple of the spring creeks around here. As I was fishing as a kid, I would watch these massive fish, and I'm not. They weren't 30 inches, but they were, over 20. They were 5, 6, 7 pound fish, just sticking their noses into the weeds and eating something. And it took me a little while to figure out what they were eating as a youngster, but eventually I figured it out. All you had to do was reach your hand in there and pick up a clump of vegetation, and it all of a sudden comes alive with these things. There's a couple different ways to fish this fly, and a cressbug in general, and that's covered in detail in the recent Fly Fisherman article. So, I guess we'll just get started tying this fly. This is obviously a completed one. talk about the hook here. I'm tying this one on an Arex FW 561, which is a basic nymph hook for Arex's version of that hook, and you know, I like that hook. I like the Partridge Wide Wet is another nice one for this fly. A little bit heavier wet fly hook, and the Tiemco 200 BL is another nice barbless version for this fly. It's a pretty quick tie. You know, it's basic. As long as you can get there's a lot of sow bug patterns out there. This one is sort of tailored to the cressbugs that we have around here. You know, a lot of our spring creeks are super clear. The fish, they're heavily pressured, so the fish see a ton of flies. I went through a couple versions of this, and really, you know, the basic DNA of this fly is the Shanks Cressbug. You know, that dorso-ventrally flattened shape, basically football shaped, if you look at it from the top. So yeah, let's just get started. What I like to do is start out with just a little bit of lead wire on this one. I use the 0.015 lead wire. Usually about 10, 12 wraps right in the middle of the shank of the hook. Something like that. Just break that off, and I don't weight this fly too much because I want it to basically behave like a natural in the water, whether it be just right along the bottom or getting tumbling down if it had been dislodged from something. So I'll generally fish this fly a little bit of weight, but I'll put a size 4 split shot about 6 inches above it. I want the fly to obviously be on the bottom most of the time, but I don't want it to just be stationary. I want it to be able to tumble. I want that dorso, that profile to get picked up by the water, by the currents, and sort of tumble around like the naturals do. So I've got Vivus brown in 8/aught here. Any sort of brown thread will work, and I try to lock those lead wraps in with a wrap that goes all the way down and secures both ends of it, and I can cover up the lead that way, and it doesn't move on me too much. I try to cover the lead with as much thread as I can. It generally doesn't show through the dubbing, but I just want to cover it up. I'll take a pair of forceps and flatten that lead out a little bit. So I don't know how well you can see all that, but I've flattened that out. Next thing I'll do is wrap back just past the bend of the hook, and the next material that I have here is uni yarn in a brown. You can use something like UTC wee wool in a dark brown as well. The uni yarn is just a little bit thicker, and I kind of like the wide. This is going to be a median dorsal dark stripe that goes across the back of the Cressbug. Most of them have it. So I'll tie this in on the top of the shank. Again, just past the bend where I stopped my thread from earlier. Clip off the top of that. Next thing I'll do is make a little loop. So I can make a dubbing loop out of this. The dubbing that I'm going to use here, and you know, it pays to, if you're able to get out to your local waters and get a good look at your local Cressbugs. Most of them, you know, I try to get a dubbing that obviously matches what the coloration is of your local bugs. This Wapsie Sal Scud, I know it's backwards on here. It's weird, but anyway, this is just the Sal bug coloration color that they have. I'll tie them depending on which stream. It could be they have a smoky olive, which is pretty nice. But for right now, we're gonna use the Sal bug color. So basically, I'm just going to make a dubbing loop with this dubbing, taking small hunks, and this fly is going to look like a big old mess till we get it trimmed up. So basically, for this size fly, you know, looking like that, and spread that dubbing out evenly in the loop. This is where things can go wrong. The thread will sometimes break when I spin it and things like that. So what I'll do here next is take a dubbing brush or whatever and kind of pick it out. Here, tease this out so we get a lot of. It's not so compacted in the twisted thread in the loop. Like I said, this thing's going to look like a big old mess at first, and hopefully we'll make it look better. Sometimes, when I'm going to wrap this up the hook shank, and when I'm doing that, I want to be able to wrap it as tightly as possible. So you can use the dubbing loop tool to wrap it. I like to use a pair of hackle pliers just to hold on to the thread a little bit. I feel like I can wrap it a little bit tighter that way. So I'll cut that off, and as I wrap forward, starting just past the bend, a couple good wraps, and I'm going to pull that as tight as I can, and then I'm going to pull the previous wraps back as I wrap forward. Up the hook shank. We get up to the eye, leave some room to tie it off. Try not to cut your thread. Now, like I said, it's going to look like a big old mess, but that's what we have right now. And I'll go back to that dubbing brush and start picking it out. Somewhat trying to spread most of the dubbing out perpendicular to to the hook shank here. I'll even start, I'll pull it with my fingers, kind of shape it to where I want it, because we're going to trim this down to the shape that we're looking for. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to go back and look at them after I'm finished with the fly and talk about it a little bit. So you should have something that looks crazy like that. There's a bunch of, like I said before, there's a bunch of sow bug patterns out there. This is just one that I've found it works pretty well. It looks good. I think the real benefit of this pattern, well, there's two real benefits of it. It's how it moves in the water, because it is very similar in weight and texture to the real thing, and when the fish gets a hold of it, the hot glue, they may hold on to it just a little bit longer. At least I hope they do. It seems to work pretty well. So I have it all teased out and sort of flattened out in the general shape that I want. What I'll do next is I'll clip the top part of the fly with a pair of scissors. So I have a little bit of, getting rid of a little bit of that extra material that I'm not going to need on the top. And then I'm going to bring that piece of wool yarn up over the middle of the fly, the back of the fly. Doesn't hurt to brush this back while you're doing it. You can rearrange it later. Gives you a nice clean eye. So basically, that's pretty much the fly so far. I mean, as far as tying techniques, it's pretty basic. And I like I like to leave this extra stuff out here until the next step, until after I tie off the thread and cut it off. I like, because the shape of the Cressbug, obviously they're fatter in the middle, and as they go out towards the lateral sides, they're obviously a little bit thinner and actually a little more translucent as well. So right now I'll just finish this. And now comes the fun part. With the advent of, I guess they're not new anymore, but the UV resins and some of the flex resins, that's certainly an option with this pattern. But the texture that the hot glue provides is a little bit better. The hot glue doesn't soak into the fibers of the dubbing, and I've literally had fish pin this fly down on the bottom with their noses and not eat it, back off, and then eat it. And I don't know if I'd like to think that's because it felt like the real thing. I don't know. It's all anecdotal. The fish wouldn't tell me what they were thinking. But we did catch them. So anyway, I will cut off a little bit of this extra real stuff out here. Just a straight cut. something like that. So we get something that looks like that. I haven't trimmed anything off the bottom of the fly yet. I will. I'll clean it up at the end. But right now we have that median dorsal stripe that occurs in a lot of the naturals, the real thing, and we're getting towards our shape. Now, the next thing in our next tool here, and not everybody has this, and seemingly I was just at Michael's the other day when I was thinking about doing this and talking about the tools that I need. Maybe this is an old school fly tying tool, but it's a hot glue gun. I'm pretty sure I bought this one at Michael's, and the important thing about the hot glue gun for this fly is this all metal tip, because you're going to need that heat from that hot metal tip to spread the hot glue across the back of the fly. So, and you really got, less is more here. So we just need a little bit of hot glue coming out of the tip of this gun. That's too much. It's way too much. So there you go. And I'll run a small bead down the middle of the fly, and then I'll take the tip and just brush it, spread it out like that. If you have a spot that you missed. And that's pretty much it as far as tying this fly. We'll get to the trimming part next, but I don't know how well you can see it, but we have basically, this stuff it cools off pretty quickly, and it's almost like a rubbery texture when it's cool. Which, if any of you have ever grabbed a hold of a sow bug or smushed them up in your fingers, they're pliable. Just like the roly-polies, they have to be able to roll up in a ball for protection. The aquatic ones don't really do that. They don't really have any protection other than their coloring and where they live. But so we're right here. Next thing is to trim it to shape. I generally like to go from the side away from me first, and a general football shape. I'll put my scissors at I know it's hard to see. I have to put my hand there to hold my scissors right, but I'll generally put the inside blade, the blade nearest to me, on the eye of the hook, and put it at about a 40 degree angle, 45 degree angle, and take one cut there in the front so it looks like that. And then do the same thing. My lights are in the way here, my hands. Do the same thing in the back. So I have like what looks to be like a little triangle there, and then I'll just cut that triangle off, and then sort of round the corners, and do the same thing on the other side, the side closest to me. And here's where you got to be careful. It's easy to cut it off, but it's pretty hard to put it back on. But really, you're just looking for pretty much an oval. The sides, we're pretty much there. The sides here and here, sometimes they're a little bit straighter. As the bug gets a little bit bigger, the more mature ones, they are not necessarily football shaped, but they have like a straighter edge through here, but that's the bug geek in me trying to make it look exactly right. I don't think the fish really mind. So we have what looks to be a Cressbug right there. It's a pretty good shape. Hopefully you all can see that. I don't know if somebody could respond and say, hey, we see that. I don't know. So anyway, we have the bottom. I haven't touched the bottom of the fly yet, and I will just get rid of all this stuff underneath here. And you can kind of take a look at it and trim it up, make it look nice, make it look as evenly, as symmetrical as you can for both sides of that dorsal line, that dark line. So the other nice thing about the hot glue that the UV resins don't do, and it mimics the natural really well, is the outer edge of the shellback tends to be a little bit lighter than and a little more translucent than the middle part, and the hot glue does that really well. I'll go in here and I'll trim out the sides. And that's, you can get as perfectionist as you want to be on this, but that's pretty much it. I mean, there's your Cressbug. I don't know how well y'all can see it. It's so small, but anyway, yeah, that's it. Technically, like I said before, there's a lot of ways to fish this fly. I like to, on the spring creeks around here, especially, I like to put a split shot about, like I said before, few inches above it, and I'll fish it without an indicator. I'm looking for a specific fish that's feeding, and I'm watching the fish. I have a pretty good idea where my fly is most of the time, and if I see that fish make a move and feed, in the general vicinity of my fly, I'm setting the hook. Sometimes it's there's nothing there. Other times you come tight, and those are the cool times. Our spring creeks around here at least are very pastoral, mellow, quiet places, and when you hook into some of the fish that feed on these bugs, it immediately turns to mayhem. There's lots of things that can go wrong: logs and weed beds and crest beds and rocks and things like that. But hey, it's sight fishing. You get to feed a big fish, and if you land them, that's just a bonus. Typically fish these flies on fluorocarbon tippet, 4 to 6x, usually 4 or 5x. We were out yesterday or the day before yesterday fishing these, and we got a couple fish in like the 5 and 6 pound range on 5x tippet. It certainly can be done, and I hope you all I hope that was helpful in learning how to tie this fly. Again, there's other Cressbug patterns and Salbug patterns. In the book, Favorite Flies for Pennsylvania, I have a fly by Jake Vilwak, the SYE Cressbug, Simple Yet Effective. Is what it stands for, and it is. It's a little bit easier to tie. It doesn't have the hot glue, but the texture of the hot glue and the stiffness that it provides on the edges, I think, watching the waters are so clear in a lot of the streams that we fish that I've sat there like a nerd and watched these bugs crawl across the bottom and get picked up by a miscellaneous current, and they sort of just like tumble until they get their footing again, and that's the other nice thing about the split shot rig, where the fly's not so heavy that it's basically stuck to the bottom, but the split shot gets it down, and it will hang up, and it'll drag a little bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The current, if you have a good drift and you have a good presentation, the current will grab a hold of your line or your tippet and sort of dislodge it from the bottom, and it'll just tumble like the real thing. And those fish tend to respond positively at times to it. It's not easy fishing, that sight fishing for those big fish, but it's enjoyable for somebody like me who the visual aspect of the whole thing is phenomenal, But hopefully, I'm going to go back now, since we've showed you the fly. I'm going to go back and look at some of the questions. I know somebody. Paul here, you just said, do you generally stick to one color or vary water conditions? It depends. They're all, at least the ones we have here are all grayish, brownish, olivish. In some streams they tend to be more gray, and I sort of tailor it to the natural, irregardless of the water conditions, because typically this is a fly that I'm sight fishing to fish in clear water. You certainly can, fish it like any other nymph as part of a nymph rig. Could be a tight line, could be under an indicator, but no, I pretty much just stick with the trying to match the natural on this. So, any other questions? All right. Yeah, Ross, it definitely looks like a bad hair day. We trim them up, try and make them look nice. They don't always turn out well, though. There's always some error. All right, I'm going back, and I'm not seeing too many questions. All right. Well, if anybody has anything else they want to ask, they can certainly do so. Again, go check out the August-September issue of Fly Fisherman. Sam, I missed the body tie part. I'm sorry. What I'm doing is I'm making a dubbing loop and wrapping it around there and picking out all the dubbing and then trimming it to the correct shape. Hopefully that helps without seeing it. I'm going to try and save this video for later, and hopefully it'll be available to you after this. No, I don't know. Absolutely, it's a good. We had a question here. Do I always use this to sight fish with, or can you use a searching pattern? No, it's a great searching pattern. I mean, these, like I said earlier, for some of you who weren't on when we first started, these crustaceans are available to the fish 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They know them. They've known them since they were tiny little fish until they're giant 6-7 pound fish, and they eat them every day. It's a great searching pattern. Use this, at least in Pennsylvania, on our spring creeks. Use this with like up around State College. Spring Creek comes to mind. Has a ton of cressbugs, whatever you want to call them. This with with say like a Waltz worm or something a little bit heavier as an anchor fly in some heavier current. It's a great searching pattern. These fish know what this bug looks like. Hook sizes, Benjamin. Yeah, usually I fish tie this fly in like a size 18 up into like a size 10 even. We get some pretty big ones. I tied a pretty big one earlier when I was warming up here. It's not a whole lot bigger than that one, but they, I'll put it in the vise. They get pretty big. We see some smaller ones. The streams around here in the Cumberland Valley, we tend to grow them pretty big. Half inch, which is a pretty beefy meal for some of these fish. And like I said, they're available to them all the time. All right. Well, hey, you guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Anybody has any other questions about this or any other flies, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me at riseformsflyfishing.com or here on Instagram. My Instagram is riseformsff. I'd be happy to share, what we've done here tonight or anything else that I can help out with. And I really appreciate you all tuning in. Have a good night. Oh, wait, Sam, again, low water conditions affect the morphology. I haven't noticed that. Our spring creeks tend to say obviously the water fluctuates with the groundwater levels, but no, they're all the same. The fish are, the cressbugs are all, they're pretty much the same all the time. That's why they work, and that's why I tie them, and that's why this pattern. And as a kid, like I said, I probably came up with this pattern in 19. And hopefully my mom's not watching, because when I got a driver's license, one of my favorite places to go instead of high school was down to a couple of these spring creeks. But so we're talking mid '80s here, and hot glue was around then, and the basic shape and the basic morphology. I owe it all to the people who came before me, like Ed Shank, and the other people who fished and were generous enough to share their knowledge of the Cumberland Valley spring creeks. It's a wonderful place to grow up fishing, steeped in history, steeped in tradition, but it's always evolving, and everyone is always ready to accept, and to take the next step in fly design and fly fishing and techniques and things like that. It's all about catching, heavily pressured wild fish. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. And thanks a lot, you guys. And be well, take it easy, and enjoy the autumn.